So thank you all for joining us for the last CPD and VR session of the year. It's been an amazing now. We've been hosting these inside Engage, and we're seeing the audience grow and grow, and we've got people here from all over the world today. And I appreciate the fact that we're just coming up to Christmas term, so it's great that you can be with us. For this panel discussion, we're going to kind of talk generally about augmented and virtual reality in education. Pull together this exceptional panel this afternoon, this evening, this morning, wherever you are in the world. I'm really happy to have these guys here with us. So don't know. I'm Steve Bambury. I'm Head of Digital Learning and Innovation at Jest Dubai. I'm an Apple Distinguished Educator, a Microsoft Innovative Educator Expert from FAST. I'm a two-time Guest Award winner for the best use of ICT, which is like the biggest educational awards in the Middle East, and the Teach website and the iPad Educators website. And I've been doing a lot of cool stuff with virtual reality, in particular in the last 18 months or so. And they've been super fun. So we've started doing them every month. And joining me this afternoon is, first of all, we've got Alex Johnson in the middle here. Alex, as I mentioned before we started, is someone I've actually met in real life. I met Alex in 2015. We met in Holland, and bonded over a love of gamification. So, Alex, do you want to just tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. So I'm actually a third-generation international educator. So born in the U.S., grew up in Brazil. Now I live in India, and I work at a school in Mumbai. Currently working in the ICT department in the primary as a technology integrator. And next year I'll go to a new role at a new school, the American School of Bombay, as the educational technology coordinator. And, like he bonded over the fact that all this, innovative technology and how that can play a role in education. So I just recently have really been diving deeper into VR, and I'm excited to be here this evening to have a nice, healthy discussion about what's coming up on the horizon.
Yeah, I've been diving, helped Alex get his Vive. So also joining us, we've got Stephen Sato, who's someone that I connected with actually on Twitter through the AR, VR, and EDU chats and hashtag. Stephen, you want to just share a little bit about yourself?
Sure, definitely. My name is Stephen Sato. I'm the tech director for a K-8 independent school in Los Angeles, California, and just really spent the last and attempting to find appropriate ways to integrate it into the classroom. Also focused around access, because it's just not that affordable at this point. But excited to be here to share and also to learn just tons from you guys. So affordable at for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome, man. You are on my waiting list for some time. I was desperate to get you on here. And joining us as a very special guest, I'm really, really excited to welcome Herve Fontaine. Now, let me just check that I'm pronouncing that right. Is it Herve or Herve? Very special guest.
Well, if you want to be native, you would say Herve.
Herve, yeah. And I'm not actually sure where you're based right now. Are you based in France right now?
So I'm actually based in Paris.
Okay.
So just around Paris. So it's a little bit colder than
France right now.
Than where you are, guys.
Yeah, I'm about to fly into Scotland in a couple of days' time and suffer 25-degree temperature drops. So I'm
prepare
a little worried
your
about
snow boots. Yeah.
It's the first time I've been back at Christmas in 8 years, so it'll be interesting. But Herve, Herve, apologies if I call you Herve. You work for HTC Vive. You're VP for Europe for Vive. Could you tell us a little bit about how you ended up in that role, and what the role entails? Europe for Vive.
Well, I'm based in Paris and overlooking all the enterprise business for Europe. So because basically, as everybody knows, Vive started as a gaming product, but very quickly we had we realized that because there was a lot more to do with virtual reality. And we're basically focusing on there was 4 key areas for the professional world. The industry, so engineering, and all the community, working with CAD, architecture, construction, medical, and education. We strongly believe in the huge potential of VR for education. I'm sure there's a lot of things we're going to discuss during this panel, but that focus made me meet David Willen, so the CEO of Immersive VR Education, probably a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
And David, we had an instant match on the vision. And that's where we started to work together. But it's actually the first we had time. I'm taking, I'm participating to a real VR panel. I've been seeing demos, but it's time, real life. It's actually the first time. So I'm thank you very much for having me.
Oh, you're more than welcome. David might pop in at some point. Both David and Mike, I don't think they're in here right now. But they are about, they may well turn up at some point. And David's actually sat in on the panel before himself as well. So I've put a couple of questions together, quite broad questions to kind of have quite an open discussion this afternoon, this morning, this evening. The first is based around, excuse me, I've got an itchy nose, in the real world, not the virtual world. So the first is something inspired by the fact I'm in the middle of this 5-part series on virtuality called AR versus VR, because it seems to be in the last couple of months I've delivered numerous VR themed presentations at different conferences around the region, and if you get to that moment at the end where the hosts say, "Oh, has anybody got any questions?" It seems to be the most common question I've been asked: what's better, AR or VR for the classroom? So I'm in the middle of this, as I say, this 5-part series analysing the kind of key areas and differences between the two technologies. So I'm just wondering about your thoughts. Do you believe that one key is more relevant than the other? Do you believe that one has more potential in the classroom than the other? Do you see them working synchronously, or do you think that one will perhaps come through and be more prevalent initially, and then another will come through in several years' time? So let's just start with Stephen, since you're at the end there. So Stephen, what would you say?
Sure, absolutely. I think they definitely
so let's just start with
together
with Stephen, since you're at the end there. So Stephen,
but I strongly believe that the potential of VR is much more far-reaching. I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, but at the same time, when in VR, fully immersed and really connecting multiple senses together, the strong memories that are created, well, as educators, that's the transfer that we want. We want that knowledge to be remembered through students. And so because VR is difficult to bring into the classroom today just based on the hardware requirements, cost, we go back to the model of we have a couple setups in the library and...
Because I've just realized Nancy's
no problem.
Underneath me.
She took your seat.
I do love hosting these things because all kinds of happens. There was that one time when Mike from Immersive was suddenly naked. I'll never forget that one. Just random.
I was not in that
one. Sorry, Stephen, continue.
Oh, no problem. So at this point, what we do to integrate, I was not naked. We asked students to go ahead and experience something over the course of a few weeks, and then sort of like a flipped classroom model, and then at that point in which everyone's experienced it, we can then have that discussion. But I do truly believe that ultimately the memories that are created through VR are going to be much stronger than in AR, and so therefore, strong believer in the potential of VR.
Cool. Alex?
No.
Yeah, I'll have to agree. I think that, as you know, for the past few years, I've been doing quite a bit with AR because the fact that so much of what you can experience, all you really need is a mobile device. So it's a lot more accessible right now because I think that the hardware cost, again, being a big, issue when you look at schools and funding and how are they going to afford the various, I think headsets as well as the computers to run those. But I also agree that VR obviously is going to be much more immersive, and that's the direction we're going to be headed. I think we're kind of at the cusp of a very exciting time. And I think over the next few years, we're going to see a lot changing. Direction. With that being said, for me, living and working in India, I actually have been doing a lot of research into VR and trying to have, students creating content, VR content that can then be shared with the rest of the world. Because when you live in a place where we live, there's so many experiences that people would like to have, regardless of where they happen to be in the world. And at the same time, we also need to give so many students a chance to experience things outside of the city of Mumbai, right, which is a sprawling urban landscape. So if we really want the students to be caretakers of the world, we need to allow them to experience things everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've referred to it as like the caretaker, like an import-export dynamic, isn't it? Like AR is about, hang on, I think I need to mute someone else. People are still coming in. AR is like is an import business where you're importing content into your classroom space, whereas VR is the export, and it's allowing AR is you to travel elsewhere. I mean, it's interesting for me, like, with the launch of the AR kit stuff by Apple, some of the Apple, education, reps in our region contacted me and said, "Oh, you're going to start using AR?" And I said, "Well, some have been using augmented reality since 2012. It happened to use markers. I mean, I've been using some examples up on the screen of some of the AR stuff that we've been using at the school over the last couple of years now. But it's as amazing as augmented reality stuff is for me. I agree totally with what both of you have said, that VR, I think, offers so much more potential in the long term, especially as the technology becomes more accessible. Now, offers Herve, considering you work for Vive, I'm pretty sure I know which one you're going to say.
Well, I mean, we see AR and VR as just a family. So we don't, it's not just because we today only sell a VR headset that we'd only focus on VR. We think this is a completely new family of technology, and we to oppose them, or even sometimes a little bit the boundary we tend to put between the two is a bit artificial, because you could have augmented virtual reality, you could have, so it's kind of family. What I think is just new technology, and both of them, bring different use cases in different situations. It's probably more, or correct, more specific to talk about immersion. I think with, let's say, tablet-based or smartphone-based AR, then we can, we can achieve things that are more explanatory.
Yeah.
We display things that, on something else. But what we don't do is to grab the brain power. What you do with immersion, whether you do it with immersive AR or with VR, this is really to grasp the attention and to be close to an experience you actor. And then as Stephen said, then the memorization is a lot higher than when you just listen. So I think probably we should more focus on immersion, rather than just, opposing AR and VR.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. It's interesting. I mean, I recently got, I'm sure some of you will have seen the augmented reality Star Wars set that Lenovo did, their Star Wars challenges. So I got hold of that. I mean, Lenovo gave me, we got some people sitting on laps here. Friendly.
Yeah.
Hey. Yeah, I mean, it was great. Lenovo gave me 2 free tickets to see Star Wars as well, which was nice. I mean, so no spoilers from anybody ever. But I was using the Star Wars AR headset, and people started asking me, "Oh, what is it like? What is it like?" And my honest answer was, "It's really cool, but I just don't understand why it's not just a Vive app." Understand, because they wanted to sell the kit for a lot more money with the lightsaber model and everything. But it's great that you're there and you've got you're fighting and they're in your room, but because they're in your room, it distracts. 1 second. There we go. It distracts from the experience. It's not as immersive as even as something simple like the Trials on Tatooine app on the Vive. It's interesting. Yeah. I do think that there's space for both of them in the classroom. We're going to kind of focus mainly on VR throughout the rest of the discussion. And the next thing I want to discuss is headsets. because this is something else that I'm regularly being asked about is, I've literally in the last week had to suggest headsets to 3 or 4 different members of staff buying Christmas presents. What headset should I get? What's the best one? Obviously we're all, Stephen, I'm right. You've got a Vive, haven't you?
Yes.
Yeah, you've got a Vive. Alex has got a Vive. I've got a Vive. Stephen, have you got an Oculus as well?
I don't yet. I'm debating.
Okay. But in your school, what headsets have your students got access to?
Vive as well, and then your standard, mobile HMD. So we haven't brought Oculus in, but if I may, real quickly, got asked by a partner school down in Newport to put together sort of a $44,000 VR proposal. They wanted a space built. And so in that mix were Vives, Rifts, Galaxy S8s, right? Because you're compatible with Daydream and Gear VR. Yeah. And amazingly, it was accepted and approved. So we're going to be building that out. We'll chronicle it. We'll showcase that. And I'm excited to see that people are doing that.
Fantastic. So when you're saying, when you were talking about mobile headsets that your students have currently got available, what mobile headsets have they got? Cardboards. Okay, cool.
For us, yeah. For the lower grades, it's still just an iPad in front of them if they're going to do like Google Expeditions or something like that.
Yeah, but I mean that's great as well. I've talked about that at events recently. The idea of like a multi-platform immersive experiences where if you haven't got no school's really got, as far as I know, no school's got one-to-one Vives or Oculus, so you're never going to have one-to-one.
Yeah,
so
right.
if you can put something together that harnesses different apps across different platforms, you can do something quite powerful. Alex, obviously you've just bought the Vive, but is there any other VR headsets in use in your school?
Currently at my school right now, no. Like Stephen was saying, when you have the younger grades where I work in the primary, we're looking at the cardboard primarily. Especially in India, we want to make sure, because they have a lot of very inexpensive Android phones that work well for it. So that's a great option. Next year, when I move to my new school, we're going to be looking at developing a much more comprehensive VR lab for the secondary. So I think that's going to be exciting, and I'm curious to see what happens in the next 6 months before I take over for that post. What new headsets come out, if we see a price point change, things like that. But designing the space, obviously, like you said, is so exciting because you have, it's a blank canvas and you really have a lot of control over what that's going to look like.
Yeah. So Herve, obviously HTC have recently announced the launch in China, at least, of the new Vive Focus, which I've just seen. Is it not Upload? Road to VR posted the first footage of it actually hands-on footage of the editor of Engadget using it just a couple of hours ago, which was quite interesting. But that seems to be the what's the word I'm looking for? The goal that what everybody's waiting for is that high-class headset that's untethered and doesn't need the phone inside. Do you see that products like that becoming the standard?
I mean, I would say VR is going to be like smartphone. There's going to be a range. So depending on the experience that you're looking for, you're going to have different choices. And to decide what is best in a school, for example, again, it's depend. If you take the ultimate, like medical teaching.
Yeah.
This is where you often, really need to move. You're very close to simulation training. Then in that case, you'll probably really want to have a product like Vive that has that allows, I would say the ultimate experience. Now, if you look at some other type of teaching where you're more into knowledge transfer. You want a classroom to experience, for example, what it was 100 years ago, or, what it could be on Mars. In that case, you're more into wanting to have the complete classroom experience, that's 3D experience. They're there, they can feel they're there, but you actually don't need a lot of interaction. And
Okay.
then but on the other hand, you want to be able to do that anywhere. So you're very happy to have a product like the Vive Focus that doesn't require any PC, that is very easy to set up, and you can move it very quickly from one class to the other. So I think we will see, different type of product for different type of learning experience.
Yeah, I mean the footage that I saw this evening of the Focus in action was pretty impressive, folks. I do encourage you to seek it out.
Yeah.
He literally did a cartwheel with the headset on, and it tracked him the whole.
Wow.
Yeah, I have to admit, if you get a chance, try the tracking is really good.
Yeah. Guys, just coming back round to the mobile headset. So we're in a position where economically right now, most schools, if they are looking into VR, they're looking into mobile headsets. I published something recently which was like my guide to the 12 things to look for in a mobile headset for use in the classroom. If you look at the image on the screen, hopefully you can see this with all the headsets, yeah? So the ones that we're currently using, we've got the Viewmasters up in the top right-hand corner, the red ones in our primary schools. We really like these for the primary age kids because they, one of the great things is they don't have the head straps, so the students can take them off quite quickly and they don't feel as trapped. Then in the older years, we're using these ones from China, these Bobo Z4 VRs, which I actually picked up ridiculously cheaper than some cardboards. And they've got, one of the widest field of views. There's the white one in the middle at the bottom. One of the widest field of views available on any VR headset, integrated audio. Not the most robust, but cheap enough that we can easily replace them. Stephen, you're based in the States. I know in the States, the Merge is becoming really popular. I have got a Merge. I had to import it though, which made it obviously a lot more costly for me. What would you say are some of the sort of main things that educators should look for in a headset? If they were looking to buy, say, a bank of 6 or 10 or even 20 for the classroom, what would be the criteria that you would say were most important?
Well, definitely, I like the durability of the Merge, the fact that it's rubberized, you could drop it. It's interesting that the one from China that had the integrated audio, that's really cool instead of headphones.
Yeah.
So that is something that I would look for. Outside of that, for us, it's difficult to find compatible Android phones, as Alex mentioned, so I'll have to pick your brain after this. I think our biggest thing is just getting into the hands of my peers, because it's all about educating them at this point so that they know what's out there and available. And so, false. As far as mobile HMD, I don't personally own any of these other devices.
Yeah.
But I know that ease of use is the biggest thing for me. Okay.
Alex?
Yeah, I just want to jump in there and say, we obviously in this room, we're the early adopters. Anytime there's a new, tech that comes out, there's obviously going to be people who have a little bit more technical knowledge and they can, get the vibe. And I think that if you look at the wireless ones and the ones that don't require a PC, then that's going to be much more accessible for the average classroom teacher in the hands of my teachers that they're going to be able to use without me being there present all the time. And obviously, durability, of course, because kids, they don't, you can teach them, to take care of their devices. But the reality is things are going to fall. Things are going to get knocked around. The straps are going to be worn. So you want something that's going to last as long if you're trying to convince the administration to put in money for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure.
I mean, I've been using my own personal Vive in our school over the last sort of 9 months. And with all the stuff I've been doing, the HTC team here in the UAE, based here in Dubai, they actually 3 more Vives to our school. And I'm conscious of the fact that I've got to train staff, I've got to train our IT technicians, because it's pick up and play thing. It's a really, really powerful experience, more powerful than anything you could do on a mobile headset. But it's going to take a lot more time for me to make sure that they're confident using that technology. All right, guys, we'll move on. Since we are all Vive users here, I figured it would be a good opportunity to talk about educational apps that are available on the Vive. I have been using the Vive for just coming on for a year now. I bought mine right in the first week of January, so I'm about 2 weeks off of having it for a year. And I've seen so much change in in that year, there's so more educational content starting to come through. You're seeing stuff coming through from Vive Studios has been producing some stellar content. Obviously, Google have put out blocks to complement Tilt Brush and now Poly. I mean, I've just I've grabbed this, I put this image together here, which is sort of 9 apps that have really sort of impressed me in the last 6 months or so that have come out on the Vive. Some of these are Vive exclusives. The newest one that I've just been hands-on with is Operation Apex, which just launched last week from Curiscope. If you have a chance to try that out, I can't recommend that enough. Absolutely stunning. And obviously the week before we had something else that was stunning, the BBC's Homes, the VR Walk. And it's great to see the BBC starting to move into VR development, and they're now talking about turning the whole Blue Planet series into VR experience. So guys, you've had your Vives for a while, you've had access for a while. What if you were going to pick 3, let's start with Herve, because we kind of come around in a circle here. Herve, if you were going to recommend, if you were talking to educators and they were saying, right, so if I get a Vive, what will I use on it? What apps that are currently available would you recommend to educators?
I think you can't say one pick, because it really depends on whether you're interested in geography, history, or different things. So there is now quite a good portfolio. I would just mention maybe some of the new initiatives, like we've just launched a few weeks ago Vive Arts, so which where the objective is to partner with a museum and cultural institution to develop educational apps that are related to their assets. So they're quite a numbers. We're doing one with the Tate Gallery on the paints on Modigliani, for example.
Yeah, that's just come out, hasn't it?
And they're in London. Yeah, it's just starting now. And we also partnered with the Paris Natural History Museum for an app that is about the evolution of species. So where basically, kids can really, try to relate, different species with others, and you get the evolution, quite a number of surprises. You would think that this is close to the other space, but it's not. So that's quite nice.
Yeah.
And we are going to continue to develop, such applications where basically the large institutions in the world, basically make their knowledge and stats available to people who cannot come on site to visit the exhibitions, in a sense.
Yeah.
So that's we are planning. It's just the start. We have about 12, and we are going to regularly increase the portfolio of education and cultural application.
Fantastic. And then obviously you've also got Vive Studios, which are producing some absolutely stellar content. And it's interesting. So Curiscope, I would imagine most of the audience are at least somewhat familiar with the Curiscope Virtuality, the T-shirt that you can look at in AR, and then it's like X-ray vision. What you might not be familiar with is the Sharks 360 video that Curiscope produced and had on YouTube. It got viewed something like 40 million times, and it was that led to the production of the Operation Apex in association with Vive Studios. But then Amazon Odyssey, that was Vive Studios as well, wasn't it? Have I lost you, Herve?
No, I can hear you.
Sorry. So, Vive Studios, are you, as far as you're aware, are Vive Studios openly looking for educational partners, or are they, are people coming to them and saying, will you help us produce this? Partner?
It's both. So we generally looking for developing applications that have a global reach, global interests, so that it can be various. It can be related to art, culture. It can be related to natural sciences. It can be related to space. So but we're really looking for producing or co-producing, depending on the cases, applications that have global reach beyond languages. We can basically promote and market across, now Vive is in 36 markets. So we're doing that. Now we're publishing, in Viveport, education applications also that are not being produced or co-produced by Vive Studio. It's really we educately doing using all the cards, so both producing ourselves, sometimes, simply co-producing or publishing. So, we've seen, a large increase of projects of education related content over the last 6-9 months.
Fantastic.
Particularly, there's been the libraries are really
Fantastic.
now getting into VR and equipping themselves. So we are there adapting a specific portfolio for them in order to be able to have we would say curated. We are there audio focused on educational content.
Yeah. Fantastic. Alex, just so you know, I keep muting you now in between when I'm talking to you because you seem to have some real heavy breathing going on. You also look remarkably like Matt Damon. I keep looking up and thinking Matt Damon's on the panel tonight.
That's so interesting though, because I've been muting myself actually, just because out of habits I keep popping up the tablet and just muting myself.
Okay, I kept hearing
That's interesting.
I kept going through the list trying to see where the noise was coming from, and then I looked at your avatar and I kept seeing your lips wobble, and I realized it was you. So apologies if you've been thinking that nobody could hear you say something. But Alex, you told me after you realized it was you, Vive, you told me about the ridiculous amount of hours that you've clocked up in it. I'm sure some of that was gaming time, knowing you, but I'm sure as well that you've come across some stellar content on the Vive, perhaps something I've not even seen myself. So what would you recommend that you've recommend? What apps are out there right now on the Vive that have blown your mind? Oh.
Oh no.
When I said blow your mind, folks, I didn't mean literally. Alex exploded rather than answer the question.
Oh no.
Right, Stephen, the show must go on.
Sure.
Same question.
Sure, absolutely. I really love Tree VR. If anybody has an experience, has had a chance to experience it, it's not necessarily published, although I'm told Tree VR will be available on Steam early next year.
Yeah.
That is one where you live, life and death, tree, rainforest, and you really get to experience the power of VR and understand what it's like to live as a tree, like the power of nature, and then to succumb to death essentially through fire and the effects of humans on the environment. Another one that I really like is Noda. So one of our history teachers, they do a lot of mind mapping. And of course, that doesn't really necessarily apply to 100% of the students. Not everyone benefits from mind mapping. Welcome back, Alex.
Hey, sorry about that. I think I reached up and something disconnected my headset for a second.
Okay.
Go ahead, Steve. They'll come back to me afterwards. Let me. I'll mute my.
Oh gosh, very good, very good. And so what we're introducing next year in January is a task where we're going to break them up into groups and have them mind mapped. So think a collaborative escape room. One guy is in the headset, and he or she is developing the 3D mind map, where their group is seeing it projected and assisting in that process. And as they cycle through the headset, right? And so we really believe that idea of mind mapping through Noda will produce better results than your standard paper mind mapping that they're doing today, which may affect, in her words, mind maps 50% of her class. So we're very, very hopeful for that as well. Excited about Noda.
Alex?
50.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Let's just test. Say the following sentence. How do you like them apples?
I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yeah?
Okay. Yeah, so I was just going to say that, my background is actually in game development. So, as a developer, I've seen, a lot of resources being poured into developing the games. Like you were talking about, Steve, I've spent so much time using my Vive for not just, exploring educational things, but also for gaming. And I think that you see a lot of the most polished experiences tend to be, those gaming experiences. And I think it's still going to take some time for the educational experiences to be as immersive. It's similar if you look at something like educational research. There's researchers and there's educators. And a lot of times there is a disconnect between what researchers think is best in schools and what educators know is and best pedagogically. And until you really have an R&D department that is doing research on the ground or collaborating with university researchers, it's tough to really make real connections. And when I look at something like virtual reality, you have developers who are, developing content, they're coders, programmers, artists, and then you have, educators who would like to see certain things happen. So, when you talk about building partnerships and this program, reaching out to educators and asking them what they want to see, I think that's where you're going to be able to see real magic happening. Outreaching for me, I've spent entirely too much time in tilt brush, and I'm not even an artist by nature, but there's something about for me, the fact that it's not painting, it's so much like sculpting. And I've just put my headphones in, I've put on some music, and I've just lost, 3 or 4 hours in the middle of the night, just using the audio responsive brushes and just creating incredible landscapes. I had my wife come in and knock on the door. I obviously don't hear her. She comes in and she tells me it's 4 a.m. and I've lost, all this time. So I think that's the sort of thing we want kids to experience, to be so thrust into a virtual world and to be so engaged. That's the sort of
definitely. And I think long term, what we're doing right here, this is going to be the key type of experience that we're going to be able to offer to students that really is going to change the game. The fact to be like that, you could all be.
I can't hear you, Steve, right now.
You can't hear me. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Can you say
something again?
Yes, I can hear Steve. I can hear you.
Can you hear Stephen?
Yeah. I can hear both of you, but I can't hear Steve.
Okay, Stephen, will you tell Alex to leave the room and come back, and then maybe he'll be okay again?
Alex, could you blow your mind again? Come back. Leave and come back real quick.
Yeah, I mean, being able to invite an entire classroom into a space like this or another virtual space, and then or even from around the world, I think that is ultimately going to be some of the most powerful virtual reality experiences that we can offer.
I lost you, Steve.
Who's lost me now? Hello?
Oh, I can hear you. But
probably just restart your room, Steve.
Oh, hello, Mike. Yeah. Where are you lurking?
Hey, I'm over here on all the way to the right.
Right.
Alex is back.
Hey. Sorry.
Hey.
Oh, I can hear you.
Hey, Mike, I didn't even know you're in here. Right. Mike from Immersive, the guy who built what we're sitting in, folks.
Hi, Mike.
Hey.
How's it going?
And recent
Good.
new father as well. I give you a virtual clap.
Cheers.
So, Stephen, you can hear me. Herve, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
Alex, you hear me?
Nope. I can hear everyone. I can even hear Mike, but I can't hear you.
Herve. Oh,
that's a bummer.
Why don't they just relay the message? If there's a question asked, they could just, someone can summarize it for me.
Yeah, let's do that because we're quite near the end of the panel now anyway.
We'll be flexible.
We've kind of covered this question as it is as well. We'll open it up for some Q&A now. This can always be fun if we can pull it off. I obviously muted all of you just to ensure that you could hear the panel. Or inside a Vive or a Rift, and you would like to ask somebody on the panel a question, if you raise your hand, I will unmute you and give you. If you're on a PC, then you might have to email me afterwards. Apologies. Or find a way to. I can see a hand. Read the name. Hello, you. I didn't know you were in here. There we go. Kwaku, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, man. How are you? It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. I have two quick...
Kwaku, before you ask your questions, just want to say a little bit about the project that you've just run with Vive, where you are. Just for those that don't know.
I just completed a project where we went to Fiji for 2 weeks and shot basically teenagers in Fiji talking about climate change and how it affected them. Then Vive, the people at Vive were nice enough to sponsor us at COP23 in Germany and provide for us to show the film to people who came through the Fiji pavilion.
That's fantastic.
Awesome.
Very much encourage everyone on Twitter, if you're not already. He's doing some amazing stuff. I'll let you ask your questions to the panel. Sorry.
Great. Thank you. And thanks for the plug. Question number, this is, I guess, for everyone on the panel, but maybe especially to Steve and Alex. What sort of research have you either found or heard about around how VR affects students under the age of 13? And the reason I'm of 13 is because that's what we are, a Oculus school, but we are getting into Vive. We actually just got our first Vive. And so I'm cautious about at what age to start with students. And then the next question would be to the entire panel. It's about net neutrality. But if you guys want to start off with the first question.
Alex,
you want to take the beginning of that, Stephen?
Sure. It's a tricky situation. For us at a private independent school, I definitely respect the advice and the warnings that children under the age of 13 shouldn't be using a Vive, at least for extended periods of time. I think that's also the case with the Rift as well. But for us, we outlined the amount of time and the assumed projects that the students will be engaged with the headset on. And then that is then translated back down into the acceptable use policy. Parents agree, and that's how we sort of get through that hurdle. We definitely respect. Lower school doesn't use our Vive, so that would be up to 5th grade. They're not using it at this point. We are doing cardboard with them, but we're also respecting Google when they say that we don't want cardboard for basic. I forgot what the age was, but we don't do it in 1st grade. So mobile HMD, we don't do 1st grade and lower. Absolutely don't. Leave it there. It's tough. That's a tough one. But I think that as we are trying to find appropriate ways of integrating, spending, 4 to 5 minutes at a time in a headset, I think that we can developing and seeing what might be acceptable, and also working with universities to see if there are any physiological effects.
Yeah, I agree with what you were saying, because I think, coming back to the idea that this is uncharted territory in many ways. And, research takes so long a very long period of time to be formulated and then to be refined and to be subject to literary review. And I think if you look at, a lot of people do have questions about what is the impact that a, extended period of VR has on the developing brain. And what does that do to the brain, especially like you said, at the age of 13? Are they particularly susceptible to changes in the way that the brain is wired as a result of using VR for extended periods of time? I think, again, it's a great mystery and something we're going to have to uncover over the next decade, most likely. But at the same time, I think, everything in moderation is probably the best idea. When you're looking at a headset like the Vive, so much of it comes down to, is the child, old enough to actually support such a, it's not really cumbersome, but a more heavy device on their head, and then for how long should they be using it? I think if you have a good relationship with the parent community, again, I'm also working at a private school, so we really have a lot more control over what we're doing. We have to obviously share that with the parents, and we have an acceptable use policy. But once you've laid that out and you explain how it's going to be used, I think that you would have very few choices. Depending on your environment, that might change.
Yeah,
great.
Herve, what would you say is HD's stance on sort of age limits or bottom age for using the Vive?
I would say it's an unexplored territory, so we're very careful. We're trying to learn while doing, but we don't have a hard cut like an exact age. We like actually in our documents we're explaining what to be careful about. Generally speaking, I think there are a few basics. Like it's true that most children under the age of 12 around will probably have a face that is a little bit too small to particularly if you think of the space between the eyes, the so-called IPD.
Yeah.
So our headsets wouldn't really fit for younger children. The other things to be careful about where children are young is that since often the perception of reality and virtuality is, can be a gray zone for the children.
Mm-hmm.
So you really need to the parents, we say, really need to coach them and be aware of that so that they don't suddenly, start running and go and by excitement. So it's sort of things. And generally speaking, because of course, it is not natural vision, VR. You're going to fix focus, so you could see it could make your eyes tired if you use it too long. So we just recommend particularly for children, not to have long sessions.
Yeah.
So
which is it makes sense.
I think we use a lot of common sense. Precautioners makes that it's possible to take advantage of the good things of VR without taking risks.
Fantastic. Kwaku, do you have another question? Did you say?
Yeah, really quick, and this is definitely a little more but I was wondering what everybody in the panel thought about the recent developments in the U.S. around net neutrality and how with the VR market specifically within schools.
Being from the U.S., yeah, it's a good question. I don't know how necessarily it might adversely affect VR growth. I do hope that we won't see too much of that, and that maybe perhaps there'll be a lot of localized software, so we rely less on the internet, so to speak, when we're conducting our educational tasks. But as far as the software's net neutrality in general, I'm hopeful that the states first will take a stand, and then we'll see how long it takes to maintain net neutrality. It. I'll leave it there.
I really hope it doesn't invade Europe and the rest of the world. This whole idea of taking away net neutrality, because I'm from California, but I moved to Ireland, and it's kind of funny watching everything that's going on from here, because it's a really bad stance to take on the internet, and like you have like an app like this or something, we don't have enough money to pay extra to have a fast lane or not get blocked or something, and it just hampers innovation.
Yeah, definitely. General consensus, we don't like it.
Okay, thank you.
Chris, I can see you're putting your hand up. Chris, I will unmute you. Can I just say before you speak, Chris, a huge thank you to you again. I have spotted you doing your usual amazing job of running around, being our unofficial CPD and VR photographer. It's nice to see that you've come dressed in line with the panel tonight as well. See, Alex, look, wrong shirt. Oh, he can't hear me still, can he? Alex, can you hear me? Now. Okay. Chris, what was your question?
I need a translator. I told you.
I was at a meeting. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so I was at a meeting today with Day of Mix-Up Reality, who's changed gender for tonight's session, it appears. But we were talking to some leaders from various FE colleges and such, like from the south of England, looking to put together a bid. And they were there saying about, new technology, we're going to make this new technology to develop the teaching for adults in the area, and they got all excited saying, yeah, we're going to build an app. And we were there going, well, no, you're about 5 to 10 years out of date, really, for building apps. So the thing, we showed them this, we got the Vives out and so forth, and we showed them, using Engage, how we could build a lesson in it and all this sort of thing. And they came away going, wow, we clearly are Luddites, they recognize how far behind they were. And so my question is, how are we going to we know everyone in the room here clearly is aware of this technology and how it's going to impact on education and how it's going to change it dramatically in the future. How are we going to get this message across to all the higher levels? They're the areas that actually need to be, investing some, not just money, but the time and the staff to be able to do this. That's the thing is, can we come up with some ideas on how we're going to push this idea to get more following?
Yeah. Alex,
maybe.
I was just going to say, I actually just recently read a study that was conducted with the United States and Canada about their how VR impacted them and their perceptions of other people in other places. And the interesting data point for me was, this is something I see, and I think many of us see when we share the VR headset with our family and friends and our students. And it's that no one truly understands what VR is until they put the headset on. Yeah. And I think that until you put that headset on, your perception and the data points, they showed clearly. It said before the headset was put on them and after the headset was put on, same questions were asked. Simple things like, do you think this is going to give you a better understanding of people or places? And I think that the reality is simple until we get, like you said, these, the Luddites actually put on a headset and experience what it's like. They can never truly understand what is possible. And it goes in education. We work with teachers, and we need to make sure that they have a basic understanding. They don't have to be experts in everything that we do, but they have to have a basic understanding of the tool so that they have an idea of how to connect the technical knowledge and the pedagogical knowledge and figure out what to do in their classroom.
And I would add to that and say that part of what I'm so passionate about is it's, again, spreading the word and the experience of VR through conferences, right? Dedicating time. Actually, Chris Chin, if you're familiar, he was willing to come out. He spoke to a group of about 200 educators, local independent school along with Tree. Tree came out and a couple other companies, and they really showcased. Everybody got intimate time and I'm trying to replicate that model at larger conferences, and to really partner with developers, hardware manufacturers, so that people, create a roadshow, something or another. I don't know, but I appreciate what, Facebook Oculus is doing, putting them in the libraries. And I think that's the biggest thing is Chris is exposing them, like you're saying, because Alex, as you mentioned, once they get in the headset, they're for life.
And I fully agree on that. There's no, I think, recipe. I mean, it's about really, making it happen. So developing apps, having programs to support recipe. I mean, the rollout of VR in some schools that will be a reference. Also, the role making a lot of people experiencing conference, as you say. Yeah, we're, of course, the world is huge, making, so we're also trying to focus into specific places. But Chris, I'll be very interested. So maybe that we connect and get your thoughts on what we could do in the UK. Maybe that is definitely in our focus.
Yeah, and Chris, I mean,
that'd be fantastic.
Chris, obviously you and I have spoken at length about various things, but I would echo what all three guests have said this evening. I know, for example, one of my closest friends here in Dubai is the guy that I kick-started our use of the iPad with in 2012, and we kind of then went our separate paths, and I've ended up as kind of like this technology integrator, and he's actually the headmaster of one of our schools, youngest ever headmaster in the history of this company. And I remember a couple of years ago, another colleague of mine presented at an in-house event about VR, mobile VR, and my friend, he came to me afterwards and he said, I don't get that at all. It just seems like a waste of time. And this year, he's actually said to me in exact, almost word for word what Stephen said, and what Alex was saying, that he was like, you don't get it until you put that headset on and you walk the plank. Until you've done something like that, until you've stood in the blue with the whale coming past you, or you've walked the plank, or you've stood in tilt brush and written your name up in the sky and then walked straight through it. It's like a penny drop moment. I mean, what a lot of people are referring to as VR right now, what in the populace, what people see as VR, as in I put my phone inside a cardboard and I can watch a video off of YouTube. It's powerful, but it comes back to that four levels, that depths of VR model that I put out earlier in the year. We're in another stratosphere once we're onto something like this. Yeah. This social experiences is just unparalleled, really. On that note, guys, I'm going to wrap up.
Maybe Steve, just to add, this is one of the thing we're trying to do is to have VR rooms in museums, because this is really the place where we can have a lot of people who are not necessarily gamers, for example. They're not necessarily geeks. They come for education, for knowledge, and make them experience VR in probably in a much more efficient way than if we were doing roadshows school after school, for example, which is very, very heavy. So that's what we're developing, a much more efficient.
Definitely. And it's interesting, actually, what you just said, that the gamers, that I do think is still quite a sticking point. The fact that you need essentially a gaming PC to access a Vive or an Oculus, that it's not something that people have got just sitting around. I've said myself before, the fact that the laptop I had to buy when I got the Vive cost twice as much as the Vive. But this is where your Vive Focus and your Oculus Go start taking things to that untethered next level. Guys, I'm going to wrap up there. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's been a brilliant session to end the year on. A huge thank you to all three members of my panel. Stephen, if you could tell Alex what I'm saying afterwards, maybe, because he can't hear me, Ronnie. Actually,